NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, offering assisted living and compass memory support with evidence-based treatment for those with memory loss. More at armbrookvillage.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, homegrown in Hatfield, Massachusetts, and providing energy savings for their customers for over 10 years. Learn more at northeast-solar.com.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, it's like a Costco for clean energy. Valley Green Energy will use community purchasing power to help stabilize local energy costs and focus its energy portfolio on clean, renewable sources. We'll talk with Ben Weil, Northampton's Climate Action and Project Administration Director, and Stephanie Ciccarello, Amherst Director of Sustainability, about how you can learn more about aggregating your energy.
And Mr. Universe welcomes a special guest to his Amherst kitchen table to talk about astronomy in a brewery. That is not his kitchen table.
No.
We'll talk with NASA Hubble fellow UMass postgrad Sinclair Manning about astronomy on tap in East Hampton.
But first, it's about to get real Muppety.
Awesome. You may recall back in 2017 when downtown Turners Falls was transformed into a movie set and Sam Elliot sightings were happening all over town.
That was because the Turners Falls born and raised writer and director Bob Kryzkowski was using his hometown to shoot one of the most incredibly named movies in all of cinema, The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot.
Well, Bob is back in action, and his next film, which is beginning production, is an adaptation of the John Gardner novel Grendel. Grendel tells this tale of the legendary monster at the heart of the ancient epic poem Beowulf from the monster's perspective.
While the movie won't be filmed in Turners Falls this time, it will once again star Sam Elliot as the dragon, Dave Bautista as Beowulf, Bryan Cranston as King Hrothgar, and Jeff Bridges as Grendel.
We are going to follow the movie's progress on the show from here at the beginning all the way to its red carpet premiere and give you glimpses into the process along the way. We're joined in the studio by Turners Falls writer-director Bob Kryzkowski, and we are joined by one of the producers of Grendel, Brian Henson. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because Brian Henson is a puppeteer, filmmaker, actor, and the chairman of the Jim Henson Company. He's also the son of puppeteers Jim and Jane Henson.
He's the voice of Hoggle from Labyrinth. He directed the best adaptation of A Christmas Carol ever.
Facts.
In A Muppet's Christmas Carol.
Facts.
He figured out how to make Muppets ride bicycles in The Great Muppet Caper. He puppeteered Audrey 2 in the film version of Little Shop of Horrors, and I could go on and on and on.
But we're here today to talk about Grendel, and Brian Henson and Jim Henson's Creature Shop are currently developing the giant animatronic puppets that will bring Grendel and the dragon to life.
Bob, full disclosure, and I are friends. We both live in Turners Falls. We hang out a lot. So it's been fun to get a glimpse into this movie from its inception. But whenever Bob told me that Brian Henson and Jim Henson Studios were going to be involved in the making of this movie, I was even more overjoyed as I have a picture of your father at my desk on my laptop computer, Brian. I have the mantra that says, be a Kermit the Frog, have a creative vision and no ego, recognize the unique talents of those around you, attract weirdos, manage chaos, from a person on Twitter who just garnered that inspiration from your father's character. What was it about Bob?
Pretty great. It's pretty great.
How did you connect, you on the West Coast, connect with Bob Kryzkowski from the tiny village of Montague in western Massachusetts, Brian?
Well, I think it started, we were sort of just generally meeting. Bob was coming out to LA and he had done some really cool pieces and wanted to just come and sit with me and meet and chat and talk about things that he's doing. And we had a wonderful meeting at my office in Hollywood. We were sort of discussing one thing and then I was saying to Bob, well, what else are you working on? And he started talking about Grendel. And I really responded to Grendel because I just thought, oh, that's a daring piece. It's really cool. It's timely. And for me, who I create worlds and creatures, I love creating creatures that have deep personalities. And Grendel, he is such a deep character in this movie and so full of inner demons that it's just a dream for somebody that makes animatronic creatures, who makes creatures that have real deep personalities. And so I guess really it was the character of Grendel and then the story and then the stuff that Bob had done. I just thought what he did with the man who killed Hitler and then killed Bigfoot, I just thought there was so much movie there. And I was very impressed. I was very impressed. And when he said, yeah, I basically made it in my backyard, I was like, really? You made it in your backyard? Yeah. So I was just really impressed with Bob as a filmmaker and creative with that can-do, we will do attitude that I love so much. And this is an ambitious piece, but it's really kind of delicious for me.
Bob, what is it about the book Grendel, which is it's an adaptation of a John Gardner novel? What is it that drew you to that story?
We read it in high school, and just the idea of him feeling the angst that I felt was reminiscent of the things I was feeling as a teenager. He's kind of trying to figure out his place in the world, and he's trying to understand philosophy, religion, beauty, art, music, and it's all the things that you'd be interested in as a young person and that you'll continue to think about all through your life. And Grendel is just an outsider trying to figure it out, and he kind of looks at people like bugs under a microscope, and there was just something about that just always stuck with me and fascinated me. And so years later, to have the opportunity to work with this group of people, I mean, it's pretty amazing.
We're speaking with Bob Kryzkowski, the writer and director from Turner's Falls, who's working with Brian Henson and the Jim Henson Creature Shop to bring the story of Grendel to life sometime in the near future. It will begin. No pressure.
Movies take a long time.
Yes.
I still feel like going in an animatronic in a physical way with Grendel as character and all of the characters in Grendel, going the puppetry and animatronic route really is the way to go. There's something about needing it to be visceral in a way that, for me, I think CGI doesn't necessarily cover. But can you talk about the decision to head in that direction as opposed to making it digital?
It felt like a performance picture. It felt like this character needed to be fully alive, and I think that there's some wonderful work being done in CG. The Planet of the Apes movies, those are motion capture, and they do an incredible job of capturing emotion, but this just felt like a character that you want to reach out and feel his fur, and you want to see real light falling on him, and you want to see him interacting with the other actors. And it just felt like a perfect opportunity for practical effects. And then, the animatronics and all the creature work, you take that as far as you possibly can. And then we have a brilliant visual effects team and Dennis Berardi and his team at Herne Hill. And they do kind of lovely, subtle, invisible augmentation for the extremes that Grendel can do facially and body movements that would be impossible. But almost everything that we've storyboarded, the creature will do. He has to do a lot of stunts. He has to do hand-to-hand combat, and he needs to be very kind of Shakespearean. It's like this is his stage play. Having that creature speak with Jeff Bridges' voice live on set where all the other actors can hear Jeff's performance is just really exciting. And having Brian right there supervising and talking about the way that this character will come to life, it's really exciting.
Brian, tell us what your vision is for this. Is it going to be a robot? Is it going to be a person in a suit? Tell us what you're bringing creatively to the character of Grendel.
I mean, first of all, just to sort of expand on what Bob was saying, why to use practical effects when it's really happening in front of the camera, it's so much better for the actors because they're really in the moment. It's interesting when you hear like Marvel movies bragging about the fact that there's 5 gigantic celebrity actors who've done a scene together and none of them were ever in the same room together. And they'll like brag about it. And I watch it and I go, yeah, that scene is sitting so flat. It's obvious that they were never together. So one problem with CGI, it's a bonus, but it can work against you because you can do such an invisible, quote unquote, perfect effect that the audience just loses touch with the fact that this is a fairy tale and that this is a creative product. I mean, again, in a Marvel movie, there'll be thousands of people who call themselves artists who have put months of work into a Marvel movie. You will never, but nobody who watches the movie appreciates the artistry. And one thing that's great with Grendel, this is a fairy tale, really ancient fairy tale. So both in the creation of the world, we'll stylize the world, we'll stylize the creatures, and the way they're presented, much like we did with the TV series Storyteller. I think the fact that Bob loves that series is great. It's one of the things that I'm most proud of that I ever worked on. I didn't direct any of it. I was just head of all the creatures. And it was, back before my father died. But You ask the audience to make one leap of faith. It's a fairy tale. And then they make that suspension of disbelief. They step into your world and now they accept everything and they're appreciating it and their eyes are wide open. And when somebody finishes seeing Grendel, the movie, they're going to appreciate all of the artistry that went on. It's going to be beautiful and magical and a little surreal and not quite our world. And yet the interaction between the characters is so authentic because you really did it in front of the camera. And I just think that's a really magical combination for the audience, particularly when you're telling a fable like this, where going into the theater, you probably know Grendel's the bad guy. Grendel's the murderous bad guy who is going to die at the end of this movie.
Spoiler alert.
And yeah, spoiler alert.
You all had about
and
two.
Yet,
you had since the 500s to read it. So.
But what's going to happen in this film is you're going to feel real sympathy for the demons, the torture that's going on inside of Grendel's soul, that you're still rooting for him to make the right choices, but he just can't.
Yeah, that was the thing that drew me to it so much, is that he can't figure out how to put the pieces together to find himself and to find his center. And that's something Jeff Bridges and I have talked a lot about. He sent me so many great books on his own personal philosophy, because that's kind of what Grendel triggers, is this discussion about how we're supposed to operate in a chaotic world. There's a great warning in what John Gardner's doing. He wrote a book called On Moral Fiction, and his purpose was to try to find a moral center to the things that he was writing, but he was so clever about never preaching what that was, that you're forced to walk away from it and confront it and think about it and talk to your friends about it. And I think that we've tried so hard to preserve what John Gardner did in that novel as a writer and bring that to life on the screen.
For listeners of this show, you may remember that the philosophy of Jeff Bridges is tied also to Western Massachusetts, in that he, with the Zen Peacemakers and Bernie Glassman, created what's called the Stone Soup Cafe, which is like a program that every weekend is making sure people in Greenfield and Franklin County, where Bob lives, have enough to eat. And so that sort of governing moral philosophy is part of Jeff Bridges' real life, not to mention the fact that The Big Lebowski is also somewhat of a moral philosophy tale, and we are reuniting the dude and the stranger with Jeff Bridges and Sam Elliot, I think for the first time, right, since The Big Lebowski in Jim Henson's Creature Shop, because Sam Elliot is going to be a dragon that you're also building, right, Brian?
That's right, yeah. There's three main creature characters. There's the dragon, and then there's Grendel, and then there's Grendel's mother. Those are the three main monster creature characters. And then everyone else are basically human actors. Everyone else are people.
Yeah, and the monsters kind of have this fun, very modern way of speaking. I mean, Jeff sounds a lot like Jeff, and he uses slang, and he sounds kind of like a guy in the 70s.
He's El Granderino.
Yeah.
But that's a really,
and then
it's a beautiful, subtle way to differentiate like the people from like the monstrous people.
Yeah,
too.
and then all the human characters speak in a very pompous Shakespearean way. And so the juxtaposition's really, really fun.
Later in the show, new clean energy prospects for Hampshire County and a new way that you can learn more science with our own Mr. Universe and possibly beers, ginger and otherwise.
But up next, we'll hear more about how the Grendel puppets will work from Turner's Fall's Bob Kryzkowski.
And we'll ask some of our burning Muppet-related questions to Brian Henson, CEO of Jim Henson Studios.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
To be fair, I didn't create putting Kermit on a bicycle. That was this wonderful guy that was head of our mechanical shop whose name was Foz Fazakis, who comes from a family that makes church organs and bicycles. So he is a wonderful, eccentric guy. He was the first one to put Kermit on a bicycle, which actually the very first time was at the opening of Emmett Otter. What I did was I got excited about marionettes. They're really hard. It's really hard to use string marionettes for cinematic effect. Whenever that would happen, my dad would kind of give me a call. So it was during high school that I was on a summer break and was able to do Great Muppet Caper, and that was where my dad was like, okay, we're not just riding in a straight line anymore. Now we're going to be doing figure eights, circles, and Brian, you're just going to figure out how to do it. So I am proud of that, and I was only 17, I think, or 16 even.
Most kids' dads are like, we want you to go out and rake the leaves.
Yeah, can you mow the lawn?
Yeah.
I need you to make Muppets ride in figure eights and do tricks on their handlebars.
Yeah. And then to pay me, because my dad was very disciplined. He was like, I remember when he came to me in England, when they were shooting the movie in England, he said, oh, Brian, here's your contract for Muppet Caper. You have to sign it. And I was like, oh, cool. How much am I getting paid? And he says, it says it right there, $1.50. I was like, what? Dad, that was a lot of work. And he was like, yeah, well, one day when you can pay your own rent and be feeding yourself, then you'll do it for money.
Classic dad.
We're speaking with Bob Kryzkowski, the writer and director from Turner's Falls, who's working with Brian Henson and the Jim Henson Creature Shop to bring the story of Grendel to life. Brian, we didn't get into the actual puppetry behind the whole thing. How is Grendel going to function?
A trick I learned a long time ago is use every technique and it'll be the most impressive to the audience. So is Grendel a costume creature like we used in Ninja Turtles and dinosaurs? Yes. Is Grendel a hand puppet at times? Probably yes, but fully animatronic. Is Grendel fully CG at times? Yes. Is Grendel, and this is the most important part, enhanced animatronics? Because I think just working purely animatronics is not quite a good enough effect for a modern contemporary audience. There'll be a mixture of techniques. I learned a long time ago that that's what you want to do. You want, in 5 cuts of the character, it's great to use different techniques. And the impact on the audience is they're blown away. They don't really know what they just saw.
Yeah, you're kind of always keeping them just a little off their footing of, oh, how'd they do that technique? And then it jumps, it's a different thing, and your brain never gets a chance to really catch up to it. And Dennis and his team did the beautiful effects work for Shape of Water, which uses the same practical creature performer on set that can interact with all the other actors, and then beautiful augmentation. Hopefully it's laid on so artfully that your eye isn't really looking for it because you're just believing it as a character.
We're speaking with Bob Kryzkowski, the director from Turner's Falls, who is working with Brian Henson and Jim Henson Company and Jim Henson's Creature Shop to develop Grendel, which will go into production shortly. It stars Jeff Bridges as Grendel and Sam Elliot as the dragon. Have you begun work on the dragon in the Creature Shop yet, Brian Henson? What do we have to expect from the dragon?
Well, we were fully designed, so we know exactly how we're going to do the dragon. But right now we're concentrating on Grendel.
Whose dragon takes precedence in this story? Because there's dragons literally on every continent. Mm-hmm. Which style of dragon are you deciding to have take more of the helm on this too?
This dragon's a little mammalian, and it has a mustache like Sam Elliot that drags the ground. So when the puppet head kind of slinks around his lair, you've got this wonderful mustache that's going to move coins, and it's wonderful puppetry, and it's operated, I think, Brian, it's 5 or 6 puppeteers under the stage, above and beside it.
It'll be a big puppet, but we'll shoot it in such a way that it looks 5 times bigger even than it really was.
The dragon, via Sam, he occupies 12 to 15 minutes of screen time, this massive nihilistic screed that he explains to Grendel exactly the worst way to operate in the world.
I mean, that's a dragon for you.
Seek out your treasure and sit on it.
Have either of the principals seen the animatronics, seen the puppets, seen the designs, and what's their reaction been to it with Sam Elliott and Jeff Bridges?
Well, Jeff's really loved watching it take shape and takes an active interest. He went and visited Brian at the Creature Shop.
Oh, cool. What did he think, Brian, in the Creature Shop?
Oh, he's a very, very enthusiastic guy, and he has the curiosity of a child in such a wonderful way, which for me and what I do, those are the greatest people in the world. So he goes straight in and he's just asking questions. What about the neck? How do you do that? But what if it moves like this? He just gets really, really enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, when I first met Jeff, I came home to my wife and I said, much like what you just said, I think he's the most curious person I've ever met. And I just love that about him.
I have two dumb questions.
No dumb questions.
They're silly. If Monty asks for you to make the dragon say things about beef, will you do it?
Beef stroganoff, beef bourguignon.
We'll see if Sam will do it. I remember, so I'm sure you've told this story at some point, but when you met Sam on the Hitler Bigfoot movie, you had a list of stuff that you just want him to read because it would sound funny.
I wanted him to say, the tumor is benign. And I wanted him to say, bungalow. And like words like that just like, it would sound so cool coming out of Sam Elliott's mouth. Yeah. But
he looked at it, he goes,
I just as soon do the one on the bottom and let it go at that.
oh, you got it.
Different is good. Mornings with Monty on the river.
The shameless commercialism was the last one on the list. He skipped all the funny stuff and went right to doing me a solid favor by giving us a station promo with my name in it, which would probably have cost a fortune if we tried to hire him to do it. Yeah. But yeah.
No, Sam is a wonderful, wonderful person to collaborate with and a good friend and a kind person. And I'm just so lucky to get to do this with all these people.
And then my other silly question is for Brian. There is a trend online to take a movie and get rid of all of the human characters except for one and make the rest Muppets. So if you had the opportunity to do this with a movie of your choosing, what would you do?
Oh, I shouldn't. I'm not. You know what? I'm not. I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I am a strong believer that using the Muppets as an ensemble cast and then letting them play roles in a genre away from our world is a very, very good place for the Muppets to move back to, because that's what we did in Christmas Carol. That's what we did in Treasure Island. Those are obviously straight adaptations of classic literature. But I do think that's where the Muppets can shine. Let them keep going on the internet. And then they're going to hit one where I'm going to go, that's the one I want. I think we should do.
This wasn't my idea. I saw it online, but I do think it's genius, is getting Kurt Russell to be the only human and do the thing with everybody else via the Muppets. That would be a really good one. And the other one that I think would be really good is get Daniel Day-Lewis out of retirement to play Captain Ahab and do Muppet Moby Dick.
Miss Piggy in Hamlet.
Hamlet. Yeah, there you go.
No, it's like, I want Sweetums to be Hamlet if Hamlet gets done.
Okay.
I need Sweetums to be Hamlet.
That would be so great.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Price.
Yes?
Can I give you a hand?
Oh, please.
Here.
That's my kind of joke.
Does the fact that this isn't comedy affect the character design that you're going to implement for it?
When we were designing the character, I thought about Don Bluth when I was drawing. I thought about the Pink Panther torturing Inspector Clouseau. That's kind of what he does with Hrothgar, played by Bryan Cranston in Grendel. He's just kind of tortures him and teases him. And I started to see him as a cartoon character, and the humor started to come out of that. So I think the design has kind of a sense of humor to it and a sense of intelligence. And that was something that we built into it. Also, Jeff, I've heard him rehearsing and working on his character and doing his lines. And there's just a wonderful sense of humor in there and a sense of whimsy. All of that had to be in the design. And then obviously when we started working with Brian on it, you're bringing in the classic work that they've done. And then I love the Rankin Bass Hobbit from 1977, and it's this wonderful design work, and I never saw anything quite like that in 3 dimensions on camera, and thought that some of that creature design would be really neat to bring into this. So there's a whole bunch of things that were inspiring us to bring Grendel to life, but the humor was right there at the forefront.
Yeah, the humor comes in this one. It comes from a sincere place. All the characters and all the moments are sincere. Everyone's sincerely in the moment. Grendel is a little compromised by his own mind, because his own mind is flippant at times, but that's his reality. So nobody will play for a laugh, but there's going to be humor. Like when I say to people, Muppet Christmas Carol isn't a comedy, they go, no, yes it is. It's a comedy. It's funny all the way through. It's like, yeah, but it's not actually a quote unquote comedy.
There we go.
John Sayles, our executive producer on Grendel, he had read this in college when it came out and was fascinated by it. So it was one of the first things. He also produced the Hitler Bigfoot movie with me, and it was one of the first things we talked about was how much we love Grendel. So 7 years later to be developing it with this team, it's so strange. It's strange to be talking to you guys today. It's all very weird.
Well, now next time you go buy it in the store, it'll probably have a sticker on it that says, soon to be a major motion picture. We're really lucky on this show that we're going to follow it from beginning to end. This is conversation number 1 about the development of John Gardner's Grendel into a major motion picture at the writing hand and directorial chair of Turner's Falls' own Bob Kryzkowski, but with production help and magic from the Jim Henson Creature Shop and Brian Henson, who's also been joining us. What a thrill it is to get to talk to you, Brian. I'll also say wonderful job with the documentary about your father, Idea Man. What a beautiful portrait, and you are in that extensively as well.
And Storyteller is one of my favorite Muppet things that ever happened. My whole family actually would carve out time to watch it, sit and watch it together when it was airing. So
I always recommend people watch it, and that's a really good series. If you're creative and you want to be inspired creatively, it's a great show to watch.
Brian Henson, thank you so much for joining us from the West Coast. Bob Kryzkowski, thanks for coming down from Turner's here to Springfield to talk with us, and we'll be following this movie as it gets closer and closer to time to start filming and until it's on the big screen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, our pleasure.
If you want to see pictures of what Grendel will look like, the website Collider.com has some exclusive pictures of the designs.
And we will say that at the end of our talk with Brian Henson and Bob Kryzkowski, we wondered what other people's favorite Muppets were. If you want to tell us, you can email the fab413@nepm.org and let us know.
Later in the show, Ben Weil and Stephanie Ciccarello will let you know about some events where you can find out about new clean energy initiatives for Amherst, Northampton, and Pelham.
But first, Black Holes and Brews and more with a new series in East Hampton as we chat with Salman Hamid and Sinclair Manning.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, offering assisted living and compass memory support with evidence-based treatment for those with memory loss. More at armbrookvillage.com.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
It's time for some more kitchen table astronomy at the Amherst Kitchen Table of Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hamid, Mr. Universe. But this kitchen table astronomy, we're going to be talking about barroom astronomy, because tomorrow night is the debut of a new local event where people who are astronomy enthusiasts can learn from astronomers like you, Salman Hamid, and like our very special guest, Sinclair Manning. Sinclair, you're a postdoc at UMass. You're about to become a professor next year at UMass, and you have a very special fellowship that we'll talk about in just a second. But first, tell us about what's happening tomorrow night at New City Brewery in East Hampton.
Yeah, for the first time ever in Western Massachusetts, we're having astronomy on tap, like you said, at New City Brewery, East Hampton, 7 to 9 p.m. It's open to everybody, all ages. You don't have to have any astronomy knowledge. We even maybe prefer that you don't have any astronomy knowledge coming in because we want you to learn.
I'm perfect for this.
And you'll hear two talks, two 20-minute talks. There will be trivia during the intermission. And fingers crossed, we're going to also have a telescope out there for some viewing of whatever we can see in the night sky tomorrow night.
That is wicked fun. Is this something that happens, astronomy on tap, at other places around the country or the world?
Yeah, so this is not an original idea by any means. Astronomy on tap has actually been around since 2013, started by Emily Rice and Meg Schwamb, who were early career researchers at the time. They started it, and since then, I believe there's over 150 locations worldwide now of folks putting on these public outreach events.
And this is perfect for you because you are a science educator, an astronomy educator, Mr. Universe.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great opportunity. And again, astronomy is one of those fields that people like. I mean, it's not like chemical engineering on tap. I mean, nothing against that.
There probably has to be some chemical engineering that goes on to making what comes out of the tap.
That is true. Yeah. But, so there will be a little bit less for that. So astronomy has a natural advantage of getting people to think about science and also think about the larger context of where we live in the universe. You have, I think, there are elections coming up.
Are there?
So there are all of these things happening, but then it's always great to think about the universe, how big it is, and why it doesn't care.
That goes well with a beer, too. It can help you better comprehend the minuscule nature of your existence. Sinclair, you're going to be one of the speakers. What are you going to be talking about at Astronomy on Tap at New City Brewery tomorrow night?
So I'll be talking about how we look at the invisible universe. So with our own human eyes, we can see a very small portion of what's known as the electromagnetic spectrum, so light. And actually with astronomy, it's really important to see all the other types of light as well, because it tells us different things about the galaxies and the planets and stars that we look at.
So the new telescope, that's a space telescope, if I'm correct, uses the infrared, and so we can't see in infrared. We have to interpret it for human eyesight. But there's another famous space telescope called the Hubble telescope that just uses the visible light spectrum, right?
Yes, and some of the ultraviolet as well, but yeah, mostly.
Speaking of Hubble, you have a very fancy Hubble fellowship. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so, well, I'm actually, as of August 31st, I'm no longer a Hubble Fellow, but for the previous 3 years, I was what's called a NASA Hubble Fellow. That was something I applied for when I was wrapping up graduate school, and I was very fortunate to get it, and I took it to UMass, to the astronomy department there, to do independent research for 3 years.
I should mention, Sinclair didn't mention that, but this is the most prestigious fellowship in astronomy. So this is actually really special, and we're so lucky to have her bring it into the Valley.
Tell us why you chose UMass as a program.
Yeah, so UMass has a pretty large astronomy department, as astronomy departments go, and it actually has probably the highest concentration of folks working in the same kind of subfield as I do of dusty galaxies. So galaxies that have undergone extreme star formation events, and those stars produce all of this cosmic dust, which then actually make it harder to view the galaxies because it obscures light and blocks out all the light.
Which is why the infrared and the X-ray and all the gamma ray and stuff can help interpret that better because it can penetrate through that dust sometimes, right?
Exactly. There are a ton of people for me to work with at UMass, and then also UMass is a partner in the Large Millimeter Telescope, so again, looking at a different portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, millimeter and far infrared wavelengths, and so I'm hoping to use that telescope as well.
What do you want to look at with that telescope?
The most obscured galaxies that we have not been able to see.
So you're like a hipster astronomer, you only look at obscure galaxies?
Yeah. Nothing too mainstream.
And far away. You look at galaxies that are earlier in the universe,
Yes.
some of the farthest galaxies, not like your neighborhood galaxy, like Andromeda or something like that.
Boring.
Really, who cares, right? Like, you know, so.
I've never done anything with our own Milky Way. I don't care about our own galaxy. These are galaxies that exist within the first 2 billion years of the universe or so.
We're speaking at Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hamid's kitchen table for some kitchen table astronomy, talking about barroom astronomy, Astronomy on Tap, which will debut in the Valley tomorrow at New City Brewery in East Hampton, 7 o'clock. It's free. We're joined by the person bringing it to the Valley, Sinclair Manning, who, apart from just finishing up your Hubble Fellowship at UMass, will be speaking tomorrow night. Another person who seems to like dusty galaxies is also going to be speaking tomorrow night at this, right? Who's the other speaker?
Yeah, so Professor Daniela Calzetti, pretty famous in the astronomy community. Come see a local famous person that you don't realize maybe. She was the chair of the UMass astronomy department for the last 6 years. And yeah, she'll be talking about dust. I think she has a law named after her, a dust law. So she's a pretty big deal. Maybe come try and get an autograph or something.
Can you briefly describe what her dust law says?
No. At risk of not doing it justice.
I think every time you sweep or dust will come back very quickly. That's like
right.
the home economic version of dust law.
You shall clean every day. I think that's a dust law. No, and also she is a member of the National Academy of Sciences, which is, again, the top level scientists are inducted in there. So she's a great speaker. So I think would be fantastic. I also worked a little bit in the same area when I was doing my PhD, and I remember Daniela Calzetti's paper. I was like, oh my goodness, this paper is so cool. And so it was just great when she joined UMass. So yes, if you get a chance, come tomorrow and see these talks. I think that would be great.
Are you the one coming up with the trivia, Sinclair?
Oh, I should have mentioned that this is not just me putting on these events. We have a wonderful committee of graduate students who I even said at the beginning that without buy-in from them, I was not going to be able to run it by myself. So shout out to those graduate students that will also be there tomorrow night and will be speaking in the future as well. A few of them put together all the trivia for us.
Oh, dang, because I was going to have you ask me some of the trivia questions to see how good I could be at it. Is this a one and done thing, or is this going to happen regularly? Is it going to always be at New City Brewery, or are we going to travel around the Valley with this astronomy?
This is a bit of a test run, and that's why we're hoping we get a good crowd tomorrow. I think we have to prove a little bit to New City that we can fill up one of their emptier nights. But so, assuming everything goes well tomorrow, we will be back at New City every third Tuesday of the month for another Astronomy on Tap installment.
What is it about these dusty galaxies that are so far away that's so interesting to you to kind of make it your career's work at the moment?
Oh gosh, great question. They're really exciting because of, like I mentioned, their obscured nature, where most of the work we have with things like the Hubble Space Telescope, even the James Webb Space Telescope now, are looking in optical or near-infrared light, and they only tell us one side of the story. And I love this kind of mystery of trying to unravel the other facets of the galaxies. And on top of that, these galaxies are some of the most extreme in terms of how massive they are and how star-forming they are. And so it's really interesting to think, how on earth did they become the way they are? And then what do they eventually evolve into over billions of years?
We've talked to Salman Hamid many times about how it was Carl Sagan's Cosmos television show that woke his mind up to the world of astronomy.
Billion, 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 million, billion, 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 million, million, billion, billion, billion.
When I, after college, read A Brief History of Time, that's what made me want to get involved in what I think of as pop astronomy, like will happen at Astronomy on Tap tomorrow night, where you don't have to be doing calculations and math. You can just be in awe of the science that other people have done. Was there an aha moment for you that made you know you wanted to be an astronomer?
You know, it's funny. I actually thought I was going to be a chemist, and then went to college and realized, oh no, this is not for me. And it was thanks to a middle school teacher who did like a 6-week mini course on astronomy when I was in the 8th grade. And I thought, oh, I remember really liking that. And kind of on a whim, I switched my major over to physics. And it's just kind of worked out since then. And then I've had a few other experiences of like getting to see a dark sky for the first time, growing up in a city, and finally seeing, what it really looks like out there is kind of an incredible experience that I hope everyone gets to have at some point.
And if you're listening to this in the Valley or anywhere in the 4 counties, there's a little bit of dark sky around us, so take advantage of that for sure. Meanwhile, there'll be a telescope tomorrow night in a little city right down the street from here, in East Hampton at New City Brewery for the first Valley version of Astronomy on Tap, thanks to UMass post-grad student and former Hubble fellow Sinclair Manning and the other UMass grad students there that are putting this on. You going to be there, Mr. Universe?
I will be there.
I have Kung Fu until 7 in East Hampton, so I may be coming hot and sweaty.
And ready to fight.
Ready to fight.
Ready for a beer.
Much different like y'all.
Up next, Ben Weil and Stephanie Ciccarello will let you know about aggregate energy buying coming to Amherst, Northampton, and Pelham.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, with support services designed to help seniors age in place, including a Compass Memory Support Neighborhood. More at armbrookvillage.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, offering co-op advantage checking with cash back on all purchases, plus secure debit card controls, all from the UMass 5 mobile banking app. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. I'm Monty Belmonte.
And I'm Khalees Smith. There is a new energy in the Valley, literally, or at least options for purchasing new energy in select towns in the Valley.
Valley Green Energy is a group electrical buying program for Amherst, Northampton, and Pelham residents and businesses. Using the group purchasing power of the 3 communities, the program says it will provide more electricity from renewable sources, 3 electricity choices, stable and consistent pricing.
Valley Green Energy will launch in November of this year and will join nearly 200 other Massachusetts communities that have similar aggregate buying programs.
We're joined in the studio by Ben Weil, Northampton's new Climate Action and Project Administration Director, and by Stephanie Ciccarello, Amherst Director of Sustainability, who's been doing that role for quite some time. How long, Stephanie?
Well, as director, actually only about 3 years, but I've been in the role of coordinating energy projects for over 2 decades.
Yeah, and so this is an interesting, I jokingly said it was like the Costco of energy buying for Amherst, Northampton, and Pelham because it's using that sort of corporate model. But what's interesting about this is not an opt-in, this is an opt-out. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Ben?
Sure. So in any situation where you need to bring to your negotiation a large number of people, right, in order to get these low prices and stable prices, you've got to have something, consistent customers. So if you can imagine going door to door and trying to recruit enough people to get that buying power, we'd be doing it for hundreds of years. So the law that allows community choice aggregation states that it's going to be an opt-out process. So your default is in, just the same as your default is into the utilities basic service when you just sign up for electricity at your new house.
Right. So does this work more as like municipal service, or is it something kind of similar? Like I'm thinking in terms of like Holyoke Gas and Energy or like Holyoke Water. Does it work more like that, or is it different?
No, it really works more like your regular electricity supply contract with or agreement with Eversource, or in Northampton's case, National Grid. So it's really just about the electricity supply, and that's the only thing that changes on the bill. So you still get your Eversource bill or your National Grid bill. That doesn't change at all. It's just that your electricity supply will come from the supplier that the communities have chosen for you, which guarantee you a more stable price for a longer period of time, because utility prices fluctuate every 6 months. This way they're locked in for 2 years. We could get you a better price, and we can also get you a greener product.
Where are you getting your energy from? Or is that the thing that is currently up for conversation?
Do you want to take that one?
So where you get your actual energy from is the New England grid. When you turn on the lights, the nearest electron comes in. Right? You don't get to choose them.
Right.
But we have a supply part of our electric bill and a delivery part of our electric bill.
Right.
This only affects that supply part. And there is a marketplace, and you can choose another supplier. So in this case, I think it's First Point Energy won the contract for this 2-year period. And like all suppliers, they have to supply electricity that matches Massachusetts law, right, and regulations, which includes about 24% renewable energy credits as kind of a baseline that they all have to do, and that's increasing 2% every year for all of them. What we do is on top of that, for the Valley Green Energy standard option, you can have a basic option that doesn't do this, is we add 10% renewable energy credits that we're buying associated with your electricity consumption that are Massachusetts Class 1 RECs, if you have to know, which basically means wind and solar that are actually local or actually in New England anyway. But those are credits, right? That's not the actual electricity. It's an accounting system to understand so that we know that over a year we're getting 10% more renewable energy than we would have otherwise.
We're talking about the new Valley Green Energy Initiative that is coming to Northampton, Amherst, and Pelham with Ben Weil, Northampton's Climate Action and Project Administration Director, and Stephanie Ciccarello, who's the Amherst Director of Sustainability. So ISO New England, that's kind of that's the grid. When we talk about the grid, right? Essentially, that's it.
Yes.
You can go to their website and see what the breakdown is of where your energy that you're getting is being broken down right now. And it's oftentimes troubling if you're somebody who believes that we should be doing renewable energy. That a lot of it is coming from natural gas or similar type fossil fuels. I have solar on my house. The solar goes into that same grid and adds to the mix of renewable energy, but I'm not using the solar on my house to power my house. I'm always pulling from the grid, right? Essentially?
Well, yes
I mean, you
and
can
no.
be off the grid, but by and large, that's how most people do it.
Basically, yes. But right, if it's sunny out and you, turn on your dishwasher, that dishwasher is being powered by solar energy because that is the shortest path for electricity. But you're probably not using all the electricity that's being produced at that very moment. So your neighbor's electric car is also charging on your solar electricity, right? Or, it's just the quickest path. But at night, you're not using solar electricity.
I figured as
Right.
much. The sun's out there, but not at my house.
Yeah.
Technically, it's still solar energy. The sun powers all of the things.
So when the aggregate,
it's just a longer path.
when these three towns are going to work together on this, right? They'll purchase as like one unit, not as three separate towns.
Correct.
That's right.
How and you're going to purchase these energy credits from where to make the renewable portfolio more renewable, I suppose.
So that's where the supplier handles that piece. And right now they don't even know. So that wasn't information that was presented to us when we were making the choice. We were stating that we want 10% more renewable energy that's local New England energy. So we specified that, but where that's coming from, we won't know until they set up their program, and that's sort of down the road. So we don't even have that information because they don't have that information.
You were mentioning that this is an opt-out program. So, and that it can be troubling for some people to say, hey, wait, I didn't sign up for this, I don't think. Why do I have to sign out for this? But there have been some info sessions, and are there more coming up if people have questions about what this is going to mean for them? In Northampton, let's start.
Yes,
Yeah.
Northampton tomorrow at 1 o'clock. There is an info session at the Senior Center, and people who actually have set up many, many aggregations like this in other communities will be there to help explain that to seniors. Also, National Grid is going to be there with some of the other options that are available for people who are income qualified and so forth, so to help people find just the right solution for them. So there'll be that info section. And then, Stephanie, can you help me with the date of the big Zoom one?
Yes. So we are having a 3 community information session that's happening on September 26th from 7 to 8 p.m. And that will be held via Zoom, so people can remotely participate and join on. And there will be an opportunity for people to ask questions. So we really encourage people to attend that session. It's probably one of the more convenient sessions because it will be remote.
Now, clearly, like that session is more specifically for those 3 communities that are about to encounter this program on their energy bill. But let's say that you're one of the communities that isn't part of these 200 community aggregate buying co-ops, kind of. Will there be opportunity for people who are interested in getting their community into something like this to ask questions at any of these sessions?
We really haven't had, they're not really designed for that, but I think that it is an opportunity for people to learn a lot. And our consultant that we're working with, Mass Power Choice, has a lot of experience throughout the Commonwealth. And so they would just be a great entity to ask questions of and to get some guidance from. And they would certainly follow up with people, I think, offline after the meeting, but they would definitely learn a lot if they attend.
Ben Weil, you mentioned that there was a law that allows for this to happen. Did Amherst have to pass it in the town of Amherst? Did Northampton have to pass it? Or is it a state law that allows... How did it happen for these 3 communities, but say doesn't happen for the community next door?
So it is state law, and I was really not involved with the 7 years of discussions.
Maybe 5.
How long were those 5 years, Stephanie?
Long.
7 years worth of 5 years.
Yes.
So really, Stephanie is the one to ask about the process to get us.
Yeah. So how did these 3 communities get there?
Well, so I will say that there was interest in at least Northampton and Amherst in pursuing community choice aggregation many years ago. I would say I think I had an email from back in 2015 where what is now Green Energy Consumers Choice had reached out to us about having an information session. And part of this was when the Hampshire
Council of Governments.
Council of Governments, thank you. When that kind of imploded.
Yes.
That's kind of when there was more push for the individual communities to maybe pursue aggregation on their own.
Because the Hampshire Council of Governments was doing a program that was like this, but the county system itself in Massachusetts sort of folded. Then the Hampshire Council of Governments folded, thereafter, and then this has gone out to other organizations to handle, right?
Right, basically, right. So Green Energy Consumers Choice kind of stepped in to sort of how they could help people. So when they came in and offered some support, it was just basically through information sessions. And so Amherst was definitely interested in pursuing one, but it takes a while, and Northampton was interested. And then we had a group of consumer advocates who community advocates, who decided to just sort of reach out to the 3 communities and see if we would work together based on other models in other parts of the country. So that's kind of what brought us together.
Would it be easier for another community who's interested in doing this to kind of join yours and broaden it? Or would they need to do it on their own because of the system that has been set up?
I think it's one of those things where we would have to have discussion within the 3 communities to figure out how that would work and how it would impact our current agreement. But there's certainly potential.
And there are, I mentioned the 200 other communities in Massachusetts that are doing this. So your 3 communities aren't going to be joining those other 197 or 200 communities to do this. This is one unit of 3.
Correct.
Is there a potential or a benefit to aggregate even further with these, if that many communities are doing it in Massachusetts? That's more than half.
So my understanding is that you reach a certain threshold after which you don't really gain any more market power. And this is really about just market power, trying to get as good a deal as possible for your residents. And so once you get beyond that threshold, now you've just got administrative burden without the benefit.
That sounds fun.
Yes. It's a fine balance between capitalism and socialism and buying electricity before it gets out of control. But if you want to hear about this, it seems like it's working for 200 other communities, and it's about to start working in Northampton and Amherst and Pelham in November of this year. That Zoom meeting, one more time, Stephanie Ciccarello, is when?
September 26th from 7 to 8 p.m. And the information is at all 3 communities. We'll have it posted on their websites or calendars.
AmherstMA.gov, NorthamptonMA.gov, and Pelham probably has a website too.
Correct.
But you don't represent them, so we won't talk about that right now. Thank you both so much for giving us a little glimpse into this corporate energy buying for these communities in the Valley.
Thank you both so much.
That is Ben Weil and Stephanie Ciccarello.
They're here in spirit.
Yeah. Tomorrow on the Fabulous 413, a Berkshire County farm that's growing younger generations of farmers and conservationists. We'll talk with folks from Berkshire Agricultural Ventures and Greenagers.
And we'll learn about the growing importance of agroforestry and innovative collaborations of Big River chestnuts, plus upcoming performances at City Space in East Hampton examining the Nepali caste system in the tragedy of Maila Kami.
I'm Monty Belmonte.
I'm Khalees Smith. We'll see you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.